So this is a story about if Naruto was the reincarnation of Ashura. Please like and subscribe and let's get on with it. Naruto stumbled yet again, unable to walk straight anymore from blood loss. One of the Jounins that hated the Nine Tails had managed to get a kunai in his side, and that's when he'd started running. He fell to his knees, breathing raggedly as the world began to spin, and then staggered to his feet again and kept going. He had to get to the Hokage's office. He finally fell down and couldn't get up. He looked around to see himself in a dead-end alley, and he slumped. He was going to die. It was his end. The end of Naruto Uzumaki. He would never become Hokage. He would never see his friends or sensei again. He was trapped and too weak to move. He heard the mob come into the alley screaming about demon brats, but he didn't move, he was too weak. He heard a scream and then pain suddenly blasted through his body from his abdomen. He let out a weak cry and blood came from his lips, trickling down his chin. He cracked open his eyes and saw a glint of something, before he felt pain go across his throat, and there was a spray of bright red blood. It poured down his front, staining his clothes red. His throat had been slit. He supposed he'd always known that this would happen. They hated him. For as long as he could remember, they had hated him with a passion. He only wished that he'd gotten to say goodbye to his friends. That was all. Blackness, then light. He opened his eyes to find himself on a plain of white. All around was white, completely white. He stood and walked around. Was this the pure world? He suddenly saw someone and he walked over to them to ask where he was. He found himself in front of a man. His raven black hair reached past his waist and was tied into a low ponytail, with two bangs wrapped in tape framing his chin. He had pale skin, just like Sasuke, and delicate features. He looked about 20, and he was simply floating above the ground with his eyes closed. He had on a white and black robe and black pants. The back of the robes had 6 tomos on it and long flowing sleeves. The man opened his eyes and Naruto gasped, for where his eyes were rested 2 blazing Sharingan, the color of freshly spilled blood. There was black throughout it, dots that rested around a 3-pronged design, making it look like a galaxy of red and black. He blinked a few times and then stared at Naruto a bit, scrutinizing him with those demonic eyes. After a few minutes, he spoke in a melodic voice, deep and smooth as honey. Hello Naruto. I am Indra Otsutsuki, the first wielder of the Sharingan. You are probably wondering what you're doing here? Why yeah, Mr. Otsutsuki. Do you know? The man chuckled lightly at his title, and then spoke again. You died, Naruto. You are on the plane between the pure world and the living world. I have come to speak with you. Well, what do you need? You are a reincarnation, boy, of me. You and I are the same. I can bring you back to life only once, but with changes. You would look more like me, and you would have my Sharingan. However, I will not be you, more like you will be me, if that makes any sense. I will give you my memories and abilities, and you need only live. I do not like to see young life ended. Naruto was in shock. But I'm not an Uchiha. How am I your reincarnation? You don't need to be any certain family to be a reincarnation. Originally, it was thought that your soul would be Ashura's reincarnation, but something mixed it up, and I was put in instead. I guess I understand. Is there anything else I need to give you, Mr. Otsutsuki? No, you must simply live. Oh, well, I guess so. Yeah, I'll do it. Good, now come closer. Let's get this started. All right. Sasuke heard screaming and yelling from down the street, and he wandered that direction over the rooftops, wondering what the hell was going on. He reached it and looked down, only for his eyes to widen in horror as blood sprayed across the ground. Naruto lay against a building with a pitchfork through his gut and a huge puddle of blood beneath him that connected to a trail that led away, like he'd run here and been trapped. The spray of blood had been when a Nin jumped forward and slashed his blade across his friend's throat. He gasped and then jumped down. What are you doing? Get away from him. He ran over to Naruto, who wasn't moving, and he fell to his knees, quickly checking for a pulse. He found none and he spun to the crowd. How could you? He was my friend. They backed away from the angry Uchiha, and then a brave one stepped forward. He's a demon. He deserved it. He killed our families. He's an innocent idiot that I couldn't even see squishing a fly, much less killing anyone. The people growled and the Nin spoke again. I don't care if he is the last Uchiha. He's a demon lover. Kill him. Sasuke's eyes widened and he got into a ready stance. He didn't want to kill and he was only a genin and not even fully that, but he sure as hell wasn't going down without a fight. He drew 2 kunais from his kunai holder and readied himself for a fight. Then it started. He slashed left and right, trying not to fatally wound anyone as he cut through them. Many fell to the ground in screams, being civilians, but then he got to the jounin that hated Naruto as well. He was surrounded with no way out when a smooth, deep voice spoke loudly, in a commanding tone, enough. He turned and saw Naruto standing from the ground. He yanked the pitchfork out and threw it to the ground, never taking his eyes off the jounin, his black eyes, cold as ice. The wounds in his torso healed, and he straightened up, looking dangerous. They watched as his hair lengthened past his waist and black streaks spread through it. He grew taller and his features more delicate. His skin paled to look the same shade as Sasuke's, who was staring in shock. Long bangs formed in the front and tape wrapped around them. His clothes changed to a white and black outfit that had wide flowing sleeves and tomos on it. He held out his hand and a long black staff formed in it. The cold eyes focused on them clearly and then, to all of their absolute shock, morphed into fully matured Manjikyu Sharingan. He spoke again in the same commanding tone, leave the boy or I will kill you. The Jounin's eyes were wide, how do you have the Sharingan, demon brat? Naruto's eyes narrowed, how indeed? But does it really matter to a future corpse, I wonder? They all edged back at the killing intent that flowed off of the boy. He came forward, smooth like a panther. He reached them and pulled Sasuke behind him, looking at them in challenge. His eyes narrowed and then widened and the design started spinning, Tsukuyomi. Seconds later, they screamed and fell to the ground in heaps. He waved his staff, and they were blasted away from them. He sighed lightly and turned to Sasuke, who was looking at him with wide eyes. He smiled, and then the exhaustion hit him. He'd been killed and then revived, and then thousands of memories added to his brain. It was a surprise that he'd managed to stay up this long. His eyes faded back to black, which revealed itself to be more of a navy blue, before his staff dropped from his hands to clatter to the ground. His body gave out and he collapsed forwards, hitting the Uchiha with his body. Sasuke quickly wrapped his arms around him to hold him up, and he slumped, unconscious. Sasuke quickly turned him and saw his eyes closed, and he hesitated a minute, still in slight shock, before he bent down and picked the staff up off the ground. He then moved his unconscious friend to a better position and jumped up onto the roof. He headed towards Naruto's apartment, and he saw the third Hokage running towards where they'd been. The man didn't notice him, and he sighed in relief, adding on a burst of speed. He reached Naruto's shabby apartment and then went to the blonde's, used to be blonde, room. He laid Naruto down on the bed and then put the staff next to him and sat down. He watched as Naruto slept, lost in thought. How did Naruto have the Sharingan? Not just that, but he had been dead, so how was he alive? What had happened to his looks? Since when had he been so cold and ruthless? His voice had held the air of a very powerful man, commanding and deserving of attention. It had held an undertone that meant if you don't listen to me, you won't live to regret it. He sighed, so many questions, and the only one to answer them was the unconscious blonde boy in front of him. Also, Tsukuyomi, the way he used it. It reminded him of Itachi. The killing intent he'd exuded had been powerful. He'd never felt that powerful other than his brother. What had he done to those men? What had he shown them? He sighed again and decided that he would just stay here tonight. It was already late and he was worried about his friend. He had been dead, stabbed, and he didn't want to leave him until he knew he wasn't going to die on him. He stood and went to the living room, where he took off his shoes and laid down on the couch. He grabbed a folded blanket from nearby and moved to a more comfortable position, staring off into space as he thought. The test with Kakashi-sensei was tomorrow, so hopefully Naruto was awake and ready to go by then. He didn't want to tell anyone that Naruto was weakened, so hopefully he would bounce back quickly. He had felt burning in his eyes since he'd seen Naruto's dead body on the ground, but he just set it aside in his worry for his only friend. It wasn't too painful, though he'd had a sharp spike of pain as he screamed at the mob, before they'd attacked him. He closed his eyes and tried to relax, best be in good condition in case someone attacked again. He was asleep a few minutes, having no idea that his friend's death had transformed his eyes to their most powerful form so far. 3 blades swirled in their depths with designs inside the blades. He had awoken the Manjikyu Sharingan. Naruto woke up with a major headache and feeling a bit sore in the abdomen, probably from the pitchfork he'd pulled out after he'd come back to life. He groaned and sat up, rubbing his head and looking around. He was in his own room. That was a surprise, and there was no one else in the room. He sensed another presence in his living room and was confused to recognize it as Sasuke, but he set it aside and stood up a bit unsteadily. He swayed a bit and then gained his balance before he looked down at himself. He was wearing Indra's old outfit, and he could see his long black and blonde hair around him, not tied up. He sighed and went to his closet. This was a bit obvious. He looked at his orange jumpsuit, and then waved it away and dug through until he'd found the package he'd gotten on his graduation day with a note that said "Happy Graduation Day, Naruto. Here's some supplies. Your father would want you to have them." It had no name, but he'd sensed the old Hokage's chakra on it. He opened it and smiled as he saw the clothes in it. They were a pair of loose black pants and a long-sleeved black shirt. The shirt was high-necked and had spots around his elbows and wrists that were tight. The pants were just standard ninja pants that were meant to tuck into tape wrapped around his ankles. With all this was a strange cloak that had flames on the bottom and red, while the rest was white. There was nothing written on the cloak and the sleeves were short, meant to go over his clothes. He put on everything but the cloak, before he grabbed his weapons pouch and tied it to his thigh. He brushed his spiky hair, and then tied it in a low ponytail that hung down the middle of his back in a slightly messy way. He nodded in satisfaction before he grabbed his staff and went into the living room where he could sense Sasuke. He reached him and prodded him with the staff. He got no response and he prodded him again. This time, he groaned and opened his eyes before his hand went above him quickly, looking for the enemy that had woken him. He saw Naruto waving and pulling back his staff and he stood, before he turned, explain. "Oh shit." They jumped over the roofs towards the training grounds at his immense speed, allowing people to only see their black blurs. Sasuke had been shocked, but he hadn't flipped out as bad as Naruto had thought he would. He had, of course, asked to be trained by Naruto in the use of the Sharingan and Naruto had agreed, stating that as the last named Uchiha besides Itachi, he needed to be powerful enough to revive his clan. Sasuke had been very happy with this. Now, they were going for their Jinin test with their Jounin sensei. Naruto had his staff hooked to his back diagonally, as well as the katana the third had given him with his clothes. This was hooked to his waist. They arrived at the training grounds and landed so quickly that it took Sakura a few minutes to realize that they were there. She immediately hooked to Sasuke's arm, looking at him with hard eyes. Naruto chuckled at Sasuke's irritated look, drawing her attention. She looked him up and down and then spoke. "Who are you?" "Let me guess, Naruto flunked out and you were sent in that loser's place." "Well, it doesn't matter anyway. You're probably just as bad. Sasuke is definitely better at fighting than you." Sasuke scoffed, giving him a knowing look. He smirked. "Oh, I'm a loser then? How about a small spar? Just a little one, between you and me, Miss Sakura." She smirked, watch me beat him, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke smirked, if you manage to beat him, I'll give you that date that you asked for. Her eyes became hearts again, really? I'll definitely beat you, Baka. Naruto just chuckled and looked at Sasuke, betting a lot, aren't you? Sasuke waved his hand, I don't think that I need to worry, now do I? Naruto smirked, no, I wouldn't say that you do. They got into ready stances and Sakura immediately charged him. He easily dodged, before his fist met with her stomach. She was sent backwards, and then he was in front of her again in a black blur. He kicked her in the chest, sending her flying into a tree, and then she fell to the ground, unconscious. He smirked, foolish girl. Sasuke chuckled and sat down on the ground while Naruto sat on a tree branch above him. He leaned against the trunk and closed his eyes, simply listening to the sounds of nature. Sasuke just sat there brewing over his own feelings and Sakura was just plain unconscious. Sakura woke up about an hour later, but then they waited 2 more hours before a silver-haired man appeared in the clearing. Sorry, I saw a black cat and you see, to avoid bad luck, I had to go around the low dash. Bullshit. He quickly dodged the kunai Naruto had thrown as the blonde spoke again, you're just late. There's no such thing as black cat's bad luck and you and I both damn well know it, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi looked up and the boy jumped down, landing in front of him. His eyes widened as he saw the familiar clothes of his old sensei, and then he went over the boy's features again, what happened to you? Me? Oh, I was killed and found a way to come back to life, and I ended up like this. You died? Of course I did. You think me a liar? I was stabbed through the stomach with a pitchfork, and then had my throat slit with a kunai. Sasuke here came across my dead body. You can ask him. Kakashi paled as Sasuke nodded. The Uchiha spoke, I heard screaming, and I went to see what it was. I was horrified. Naruto was slumped against a building with a pitchfork through his stomach. I arrived just in time. He took a deep breath, like it was hard to speak, to see his throat get slashed. Kakashi gasped and Naruto unconsciously rubbed his throat, yeah, that hurt a bit. Wait. You're lying, you idiot. I don't know how you tricked Sasuke-kun, but you're lying. Naruto turned to her and his eyes flashed with the Sharingan for a moment, really? You think me a liar? Tell me, when have I ever lied? Well, you arg. I knew you have. Just admit it. Naruto shook his head, you can't even think of something. Well, that's your problem. So sensei, when is the test starting? Kakashi regained his composure, 5 minutes. The task is to get these bells from me. He held up 2 bells, and then continued, the people that get the bells pass, and the one that doesn't goes back to the academy. The 2 males nodded, but Sakura screeched in anger, wait. What? That's not fair. We passed the test. Naruto stepped forward, tell me, you learned 3 jutsus, right, Sakura? Yeah. What's it to you, Baka? Naruto's eyes narrowed marginally in anger, but he continued, if in a bit colder voice, how many jutsus do you think a Chunin knows? She thought a moment, well, about the same as us. He shook his head, no. A Chunin must know at least 10 jutsus or he will die in the field. You may not need to show the jutsus to become a Chunin, but if you do not have more than 3 jutsus, you will be killed in battle. She looked a bit nervous now, but that must not be true. If it was, we would have to do more to become genin. That is the job of your Jounin sensei. They teach you more jutsus. Kakashi sensei, also known as Copy Ninja Kakashi, knows over 1,000 jutsus. Kakashi's eye widened, how do you know my name on the field, Gaki? You think that I wouldn't investigate all of my possible teachers? No, I know. I see. Sakura spoke, well then, you'll die. You could never learn that many jutsus. You're a loser. Sasuke-kun's better than you. Naruto pinched his nose and then suddenly made a rapid series of hand seals, before putting his fingers to his mouth, fire style, great fireball jutsu. A giant fireball spat from his mouth, lighting up the entire clearing. It sped towards Sakura, but then Naruto sped in front of her and made more seals, water style, great wall of water jutsu. A giant wall of water rose up in front of them, stopping the fireball. Once the steam cleared, everyone was staring at him in shock, including Kakashi. Kakashi. He shrugged, I know more than that, but I think that it's not wise to use more chakra with the test coming up. Kakashi's eye widened, more chakra. You made that water wall out of nothing. Even I can't do that. Only the second Hokage was that powerful. Naruto shrugged again, I only used a small portion of my chakra. I have large amounts. Kakashi's breath caught in his throat. Was he using the fox's chakra? He shook his head to clear his thoughts. Well then. Let's get started. He pulled out an orange book. Go. Naruto's eyes caught on the book and his eye twitched. Indra had not been able to stand perverts. He shook his head and pulled his teammates into the bushes. He pulled them farther away and then stopped and sat down. I think that we can agree that this is about teamwork? Sasuke nodded, but Sakura shrieked, what makes you think that, Baka? There's only 2 bells. Sasuke-kun and I will get them, and you'll go back to the academy where an idiot like you belongs. Naruto's eye twitched again and he sighed, before he spoke. 1. I have never seen only a 2-man genin team. 2. The bells are meant to separate us so that we can't properly use teamwork, which is the only way to beat a jounin as genins. 3. Shut up. He probably knows where we are now. She growled, you shut up, Baka. He shook his head. Now, if you'll listen, I've got a plan. She turned her head away. I won't listen to an idiot like you. Sasuke had had enough. He stalked up to her. Listen here. Naruto is completely different than you think. I will not have you speaking to my friend like that. So either shut up or else. She gasped. You agree with the idiot, Sasuke-kun? It's Sasuke. Not Sasuke-kun. I am not close to you. I never plan on being close to you. Naruto is the only one that I plan on getting close to anytime soon. I can't stand everyone else with their muttering about the last Uchiha and how to gain his money in genetics. It's ridiculous. Now, if Naruto's got a plan, we will listen, and that is final. She looked between them with wide eyes and then nodded. All right. What's the plan, Naruto? It goes like this. It had been a month since the test. They had, of course, passed due to their teamwork. They had been doing D-rank missions since. Naruto had gained patience with Indra's memories, so he didn't throw a fit. He knew these missions helped their training by making them closer as a team. He was no fool. He snuck from behind the tree he was hiding behind and sensed his teammates' chakra coming, so he did his secret move none of them knew about. They were catching Tora, so he simply pulled a can of tuna from his weapons pouch and opened it with a kunai. He heard the rustling in the bushes stop and then pick up, and the gray cat came from them with her nose up. She saw the tuna and ran over to it, eating it quickly. He saw the pink bow on her ear and smirked. Too easy. When she was finishing the last drop, he snagged her, holding her where her claws couldn't get him. She hissed and tried twisting, but he held firm, and she stopped, looking as angry as a cat can about her imprisonment. His teammates arrived and looked at him in surprise. You caught the demon cat. Nice one, Naruto. Thanks, Sasuke. Let's go turn her in. A C-rank, Lord Hokage? But they're only month into being genin. You can't send them on a C-rank so soon. Kakashi looked at the Chunin. Listen, my team is very skilled. If I say that they can do this, then they can probably even do a B rank and be fine. I'm very cautious. Irika was about to speak when the Hokage broke in. If Kakashi says his team is ready, I'll believe him. Now, yes, here it is. The mission is to guide a bridge builder by the name of Tazuna to Wave Country. It should last 2 weeks, but maybe more as he isn't trained to travel like a shinobi. Kakashi nodded. Hi, Hokage-sama. Where is our mission? Come in, Tazuna. An old man that smelled of alcohol walked in and looked at them. This is my team? I asked for shinobi, not a bunch of brats. Pinky over there looks like a strong wind could blow here over. Sakura growled, I'll have you know that I was the smartest person in my class, old man. Naruto put a hand on her shoulder, the smartest, not the strongest. Now please stop your yelling. That is an inappropriate action in front of a client. Shut up, Baka. I don't listen to idiots. Tazuna spoke. You called him an idiot? He was the intelligent one in that conversation. Her jaw dropped and the Hokage stepped in. Enough. Now, the mission leaves in 2 hours at the gates. You are dismissed. Naruto, Sasuke, and Kakashi all fisted their hands over their hearts and bowed. Hi, Hokage-sama. Sakura stayed silent, pouting, and they stood, before they disappeared. Sarutobi sighed. What is wrong with a door these days? First Jiraiya, then Minato, then Kakashi, now Naruto and Sasuke.